And for those of you who have your own stories to share, I have my own. So we all know that Jordan has been dealing with his issues regarding his back, and that was never easy. I have dealt with back issues too, but I actually had a near-death experience in the fall of 2014. So the way it went down, and I can, again, I remember this like it was yesterday. I mean, how can you forget? I came that close. And so I was going to bed. It was a Saturday night. It was probably somewhere between 12 and 1 in the morning. And I remember I was about to lay down and I started to get this very like stomach turning pain in my abdomen. And I couldn't exactly explain what it was. I thought it was maybe just stomach ache of some kind, but it felt like it was tightening and tightening and I couldn't explain it. And so I figured, all right, well, I'll lay down and I'll fall asleep and eventually it'll go away. But there was a voice in my head that told me, you need to get up. You need to go to the hospital right now. I had never done that before in my life, not once. But for some reason in this moment, my instinct took over and I just said, all right, you know what? I got to go to the hospital. And so I did. I went to a hospital. This is when I was living in Delray Beach, Florida. And so thankfully I lived pretty close to the hospital. It wasn't that long of a drive, which that could have ended up becoming a problem, even though it was the middle of the night. And so I get there. And it takes about an hour. You know, I check in, I go into this room. I explained what the problem was. They did like an ultrasound. They had me drink the, iodide with like orange juice. And so I'm waiting around and now it's probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. And the doctor comes in with like this big grin on his face. And he says, you don't know how lucky you are. If you had gone to sleep tonight, you probably were not going to wake up in the morning. Your appendix is about to burst and we need to get you into emergency surgery right now. And so I made my one phone call, which was to my father, just to let him know that I loved him and that, if I don't talk to you again, that's, what could you do? You do what you got to do. And so, they told me that if I remember correctly, he said, your appendix will burst in about 45 minutes. You need to get into surgery right now. And so they got me into surgery. Thankfully, I was okay. I ended up contracting gastritis as a result of this surgery, but I had my appendix removed and it was very painful. For anybody who's had it removed, it's not pretty. But in my case, it was one of those situations where I did go to sleep. If I had gone to sleep, the odds that I was not going to wake up in the morning was very, very high. And so everything just happens for a reason. And I would have been deceased at the age of 31.
Okay, but get to the real important part of the story, which is,
I know, because it wasn't that important that I survived. No. The more important part is, you have insurance? Is that I did have insurance at the time. I did have it. And I had good insurance from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Anesthesia, anybody?
Right. You get a certain amount of time. The clock is ticking.
So despite having this coverage that I thought actually mattered, turns out that it didn't mean anything because I still ended up getting a bill for $4,000 in the mail.
How, and I'm sitting here thinking like $4,000, it's not bad. Like that's what, depending on what your deductible is, like that's what I'm thinking. And that's what we're so brainwashed into thinking.
And if you ask almost anybody who's in this chat, guys, what would $4,000 of a setback financially do for you?
No. Most people can't afford a $400 emergency. Just because I think that's not bad, that doesn't mean I think that that's not criminal.
No, and even at the time,
that doesn't mean that atypical from what I hear.
Well, my instinct at the time, because I can remember this, I was a homeowner at the time. I was living, I had a nice house, and I had some amount of means, but I thought this is a lot of money. Like this is not. I can't. You're asking me to just throw down $4,000. What if I was just a 9-to-5 working person in a like a regular job? What if I was that person? How the hell am I going to pay for this?
You're not.
They will do one of two things. Don't forget, it's the garnishing of wages, which is a very common practice with medical debt. And then you also have the interest accumulation on the money that you owe. It's one of the reasons why student debt is so out of control. It's the money on the interest that is made. That's where it comes from. Colin, if you could start highlighting some of these posts, add 4,000 of debt to my existing debt from Shrimp Roll Mike, Chuck Stark, my back
I don't know how you're able to read this.
My back surgery was $100K. That was back when yes, absolutely.
No, these are
all have these stories. We have all experienced this nightmare. I'm trying not to curse because I don't want Jordan to get
no, we're being we have to be good.
Our channel is already it's been demonetized many times, and of course it's shadow banned. So we say whatever the F we want on our channel.
But we're not going to do that here, and we're playing we're being very good.
Yeah. And MH777, Jen, you were a Texas resident. In Texas, I can't simply afford health insurance. And I make too much to get Medicaid. And it's the same problem. This is the reason why Obamacare was a failure from day one. You basically have to make a poverty wage in order for it to be justified. Exactly.
That's what I'm talking about.
See, this is what it's like living in a country that actually does have health care.
I know. It's just really pathetic. But yeah. So is what else do we want to, is there anything else that we need to cover about him? Like what, I mean, I could talk about my thoughts on this. I have a lot of thoughts. I have so many thoughts. And I did get the memo from Jordan. So I'm going to contain my thoughts to very hypothetical and speculative, but I just would like to
also, you guys can curse, by the way.
Oh, okay. No, I don't really care about that. But thank you, Colin. I would just like to put some ideas out there for people to sort of ponder, right? Like, what is our concept of violence? Like, what do we consider violence, and what we've been sort of brainwashed, and how a narrative has allowed us to believe that certain things are violent and certain things are not violent, when in fact, things like austerity is violence. Denying people access to healthcare, denying people healthcare, denying women reproductive freedom, that's violence. That's the equivalent of somebody standing with a boot on your neck. And that is violence towards us. And it bothers me immensely when I hear people saying things about this CEO, like, this was in cold blood. Well, was it? Was it? If there was a man standing on the street wielding a knife and walking around and stabbing people, and someone like Luigi came up and killed him, and that forced him to stop killing all those other people, and given what we just saw in the Daniel Penny case, I'd say that we tend to believe that vigilante justice is sound when it's in the name of protecting people. So what if that CEO, what if we understood violence as it really is, and recognize that what he was doing and what that company does is violent? It's violent. And when someone says something like, oh, well, they'll just get another CEO, absolutely they will. So the guy standing with the knife, and you get him, someone else is just going to kill somebody somewhere anyway. So why bother killing people? It's like, it's circular reasoning. But at the end of the day, we need to be comparing apples to apples. And to me, what they do is violence. And violence begets violence. And I will say something that I've said a bazillion times on our show. The level of violence in any society is determined by the oppressor, not by the oppressed. It is always determined by the oppressor. The amount of violence that is necessary to remove the boot on your neck is directly correlated to the pressure of that boot.